In 1541, a Spanish conquistador named Francisco de Orellana sailed down a massive, uncharted river in South America. He and his chronicler, Gaspar de Carvajal, recorded something that European historians would later dismiss as a total fabrication, a fever dream of starving men. They described massive, sprawling cities along the riverbanks. They wrote of advanced civilizations, densely populated settlements stretching for miles, road networks, and millions of people living in the heart of the Amazon basin. When later explorers returned to the Amazon a century later, they found nothing, just impenetrable jungle and small, scattered tribes of hunter-gatherers. The cities were gone. The millions of people were gone. European scientists concluded that Carvajal had lied. Their reasoning was based on biology. The soil of the Amazon rainforest is famously, notoriously, terrible. It is highly acidic, leached of nutrients by constant rain, and composed of heavy clay called oxisol. It is biologically impossible to support a massive agricultural civilization on Amazonian dirt. If you cut down the trees and plant crops, the heavy rains wash away whatever meager nutrients exist within a single season. The soil turns into brick. Therefore, the scientists said, the Amazon could never have supported cities. But the scientists were wrong. Carvajal was telling the truth. The cities existed. They were wiped out by European diseases, smallpox, and influenza moving faster than the explorers themselves. But before they died, those indigenous Amazonians achieved something that modern agricultural science is only just now beginning to understand. They did not just farm the soil, they engineered it. Deep in the Amazon, archaeologists began finding patches of earth that defied all logic. In the middle of the yellow, acidic, barren jungle clay, they found patches of soil that were jet black. Soil that was 10 feet deep. Soil that was incredibly rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and calcium. Soil that, astonishingly, seemed to regenerate itself. Local farmers called it Terra Preta do Indio, or Amazonian dark earth. This soil is over 3,000 years old. It has been exposed to the heaviest rains on the planet for millennia, yet it has not washed away. It has not lost its fertility. In fact, if you leave a patch of Terra Preta alone, it actually expands. It grows. It is a living, self-replicating biological battery, and it produces crop yields that absolutely dwarf modern chemically fertilized farmland. The secret of Terra Preta survived the collapse of the Amazonian empires because it was physically baked into the earth. But in the modern Western world, most people have never heard of it. We rely on a fundamentally broken system of agriculture that treats soil as dead dirt, requiring constant, expensive inputs. That silence is not an accident. Today, we are going to decode the 3,000-year-old soil secret. We are going to build Terra Preta in your backyard. By the time you finish listening, you will understand how to create a regenerative, self-replicating growing medium that will feed your family for decades without ever buying another bag of chemical fertilizer, without depending on supply chains, and without asking for permission. But first, you need to understand exactly how we forgot this and what replaced it. Around the mid-19th century, European agriculture was facing a crisis. Crop yields were dropping. The soil was exhausted. A German chemist named Justus von Liebig made a breakthrough. He discovered that plants primarily need 3 chemical elements to grow: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. This was the birth of the agricultural chemical industry. Liebig convinced the world that soil didn't matter. Soil was just a sponge that held the plant up. All that mattered was pouring water-soluble NPK chemicals into that sponge. Then, in the early 20th century, 2 scientists named Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch invented a process to pull nitrogen out of the air using extreme heat, extreme pressure, and fossil fuels. The Haber-Bosch process allowed humanity to manufacture synthetic nitrogen fertilizer on an industrial scale. It changed the world. It allowed the global population to explode. But it came with a devastating hidden cost. Synthetic nitrogen is like a biological drug. When you apply it to your garden, the plants immediately green up and grow fast. But the synthetic salts burn the microscopic life in the soil. They kill the beneficial bacteria. They destroy the delicate fungal networks. Furthermore, because synthetic nitrogen is water-soluble, it doesn't stay in the soil. The moment you water your garden, or the moment it rains, the chemicals wash out of the root zone and run off into the rivers and oceans, causing toxic algae blooms. Because the synthetic fertilizer destroyed the soil's natural ability to hold nutrients, the soil dies. It becomes addicted. The next year, you have to buy more fertilizer just to get the same result. You have to buy more herbicides because the sick soil invites weeds. You have to buy more pesticides because chemically pumped plants are weak and attract insects. You become a subscriber to the industrial agricultural complex, and that industry, worth hundreds of billions of dollars globally, relies entirely on your continued dependence. If you knew how to build soil that fertilized itself for 3,000 years, you would never buy their products again. The indigenous people of the Amazon did not have synthetic nitrogen. They did not have fossil fuels, but they had an intimate, profound understanding of ecology. They realized that you cannot feed the plant. You have to feed the soil, and the soil will feed the plant. They created terra preta using a highly specific, multi-layered recipe. It was not just compost. Compost is great, but compost breaks down. In a hot, wet climate, organic matter decomposes and vanishes into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide in a matter of months. To create immortal soil, you need a skeleton. You need a permanent structure that can hold the nutrients and the biology in place forever. The skeleton of terra preta is biochar. Biochar is not ash. If you burn wood in an open campfire, it turns to white ash. The carbon is destroyed, released into the air as smoke. Biochar is created through a process called pyrolysis. This is the baking of biomass wood, agricultural waste, coconut shells in a high heat, zero oxygen environment. Because there is no oxygen, the wood does not catch fire and turn to ash. Instead, the volatile gases burn off, leaving behind a pure, nearly indestructible carbon lattice. If you look at biochar under an electron microscope, it looks like a high-rise apartment building. It is a vast, rigid, honeycomb-like matrix of microscopic tubes and chambers. These are the preserved cellular walls of the original wood. The internal surface area of a single gram of biochar, a piece the size of a pencil eraser, can be over 400 square meters. It is one of the most porous substances on planet Earth. When you put biochar into the soil, it does two extraordinary things. First, it acts as a permanent, physical housing development for soil microbiology. Bacteria, archaea, and fungi move into these microscopic chambers. Inside the biochar, they are safe from predators like nematodes and protozoa. They are safe from drying out during a drought. Because the biochar holds moisture, like an indestructible sponge, they build massive, thriving colonies. Second, biochar has an incredibly high cation exchange capacity, or CEC. In chemistry, cations are positively charged nutrient ions, things like calcium, potassium, magnesium, and ammonium. Biochar carries a strong negative electrical charge. When nutrients enter the soil, the biochar acts like a magnet. It grabs the nutrients and holds them tightly within its carbon structure. The heavy rains can pound down on the soil for 1,000 years, but the nutrients will not wash away. The biochar refuses to let them go. However, the magnetic grip is perfectly calibrated. When a plant root brushes up against the biochar, the plant can easily pull the nutrients away. Biochar is the battery. It holds the charge, and it powers the system. But a battery is useless if it doesn't have a conductive network. The network of terra preta is mycorrhizal fungi. This is the biological engine that makes the soil regrow itself. Mycorrhizal fungi are microscopic fungal threads called hyphae that physically attach themselves to the roots of your plants. They effectively become an extension of the plant's root system. These fungal threads spread out for miles beneath the surface of the soil. They are infinitely thinner than plant roots, allowing them to squeeze into the microscopic pores of the biochar and the surrounding clay to mine nutrients that the plant could never reach on its own. The fungi secrete powerful enzymes and acids that literally dissolve solid rock, extracting phosphorus, iron, and zinc, and piping them directly back to the plant. In exchange, the plant feeds the fungi liquid carbon sugars it produces through photosynthesis. But here is where the self-replicating magic happens. As these fungal threads grow and die, they secrete a sticky, glue-like protein called glomalin. Glomalin is the holy grail of soil building. It binds microscopic particles of clay, organic matter, and biochar together into little clumps called aggregates. These aggregates create massive air pockets in the soil. The soil becomes spongy. It breathes. It absorbs water instantly instead of flooding. Over decades, the constant shedding of fungal matter, the accumulation of glomalin, and the ceaseless reproduction of bacteria inside the biochar cause the volume of the soil to physically expand. It deepens. It grows darker. It regrows itself. But the Amazonians didn't just use biochar. The archaeological excavations of Terra Preta reveal two other critical ingredients that made the system indestructible: broken pottery and bone. Why pottery? The indigenous Amazonians intentionally crushed up terracotta clay pots and mixed them deep into the soil. For a long time, modern scientists thought this was just garbage disposal. But it was brilliant chemical engineering. Terracotta is baked clay. It is highly porous and rich in specific minerals. When mixed with biochar, the pottery shards act as an acoustic and chemical buffer. They help regulate the pH of the highly acidic jungle soil, bringing it closer to neutral, which is exactly what vegetables need to thrive. And the bones? Fish bones, animal bones, and even human remains were charred and added to the mix. Bone is essentially calcium phosphate. Phosphorus is the most difficult nutrient to keep in tropical soils. It binds instantly to iron and becomes completely unavailable to plants. But when you char the bones and trap the phosphorus inside the biochar matrix, it becomes a slow release, eternal source of energy for the plants. Phosphorus is the element of blooming and fruiting. A soil rich in stabilized phosphorus will produce heavy, massive yields of fruit, tomatoes, squash, and beans, year after year, without degradation. The European settlers brought cows, plows, and wheat. They brought a system of extraction. They broke the earth, took the nutrients, and moved on when the soil died. The Amazonians brought carbon, biology, and waste. They built a closed-loop system of deposition. They made the earth richer every single day. We are going to replicate their system. We are going to build your own localized patch of Terra Preta. This is not a weekend project that gives you instant results. This is a generational investment. You are building soil that your grandchildren will grow food in. Here is the exact, step-by-step master blueprint for building immortal soil in your backyard. Step 1 is the production of the biochar. You cannot buy cheap charcoal briquettes from the grocery store. Those are filled with chemical binders, lighter fluid, and coal dust. They will poison your soil. You have to make true biochar, or buy pure horticultural biochar from a reputable source. But making it is free, and it is the ultimate act of self-reliance. The easiest and most efficient way to make biochar at home is using a cone pit or a kon-tiki kiln. You dig a cone-shaped hole in the ground, about 3 feet wide at the top and tapering down to a point, about 2 feet deep. The angle of the cone is critical. It creates a vortex of air that burns the smoke but starves the wood underneath of oxygen. You start a small, incredibly hot fire at the very bottom of the cone using dry twigs. As the twigs burn down to glowing coals, you add a single layer of larger wood branches, sticks, agricultural waste. The fire burns on top of the wood, consuming the oxygen before it can reach the wood below. The wood below doesn't burn to ash. It cooks. It undergoes pyrolysis. As soon as that layer turns black and starts to show a white ash edge, you add another layer of wood. You keep doing this, layer by layer, building the fire up. The fire on top acts as a cap, a lid of flame that locks the oxygen out of the pit. When the pit is entirely full of glowing black carbon, you reach the most critical phase, the quench. You cannot let it cool down slowly, or it will turn to ash. You must flood the pit with water instantly, hundreds of gallons. It will hiss, it will steam, and the violent temperature change will actually fracture the carbon on a microscopic level, creating even more pores, even more surface area. You now have raw biochar, but if you take this raw biochar and put it directly into your garden, you will make a catastrophic mistake. This is where almost everyone fails when they try to use biochar. Raw biochar is an empty battery. It is a vacuum. Because its cation exchange capacity is so high, and because it is completely devoid of life, if you put it in your soil, it will violently suck every available nutrient and drop of water out of the surrounding earth. Your plants will turn yellow. They will stunt. They will die. The biochar will steal their food. You must move to step 2, the inoculation, also known as charging the char. You have to fill the battery before you plug it into the system. To charge the biochar, you need biology, and you need nitrogen. The traditional Amazonian method was simple: human waste, food scraps, and fermentation. We are going to do a modern, highly controlled version of this. You need to break the biochar down into smaller pieces. You don't want giant logs. You want pieces the size of a dime or smaller. You can put it in a heavy canvas bag and crush it with a sledgehammer or drive over it with your car. Once crushed, you put the biochar into a large compost bin or a heavy-duty plastic drum. Now, you brew a powerful biological inoculant. You can use heavily aerated compost tea, rich in bacterial and fungal life. You can use liquid kelp and fish emulsion. Or, if you want to follow the absolute most efficient, historically accurate, and closed-loop method, you use human urine. Urine is sterile, and it is incredibly rich in plant-available nitrogen, urea, and phosphorus. It is the exact fuel the biochar needs. You mix the liquid nutrients with the biochar until it is completely saturated. Next, you introduce the biology. You add layers of active, rich compost. You add handfuls of forest soil from a healthy nearby woods. This brings in the indigenous, localized fungal spores. If you want to accelerate the process, you use an anaerobic fermentation method called bokashi. You add lactic acid bacteria and yeast, sealing the container tight. You leave this mixture to charge for at least 4 weeks. 6 is better. Do not rush this. Inside that drum, a microscopic gold rush is happening. Billions of bacteria are moving into the biochar condominiums. Fungal hyphae are threading through the carbon pores. The negative electrical charges are grabbing the nitrogen and holding it tight. The biochar is transforming from a dead, empty vacuum into a pulsating, living organism. Step 3 is the assembly of the mineral matrix. Remember the pottery and the bones? We need to recreate that structural and nutritional buffer. You need calcium and slow-release phosphorus. You can use organic bone meal from a garden center, but it is much better to make it yourself. Save your chicken, beef, and pork bones. Throw them into your next biochar fire. The heat will burn off the fat and marrow, leaving brittle, white, calcined bone. Crush this into a fine powder. It is pure, stabilized calcium phosphate. For the terracotta, you can use broken, unglazed clay pots. Put on safety glasses, wrap them in a tarp, and smash them into tiny, pebble-sized pieces with a hammer. You also need rock dust basalt or azomite. This provides the trace elements: the molybdenum, the zinc, the manganese. Industrial agriculture ignores trace elements, which is why modern vegetables taste like water and have a fraction of the nutritional value they did a century ago. Step 4 is the integration. You are not going to sprinkle this on the surface. You are going to build a deep, permanent bed. Choose the location for your garden. Dig a trench at least 12 to 18 inches deep. You are going to layer the materials. You put down a layer of your charged, biological biochar. Then a dusting of your crushed bone, terracotta, and rock dust. Then a thick layer of organic matter, rotting leaves, grass clippings, and kitchen compost. Then you put the native soil back on top, mixing it slightly. You are creating a lasagna of energy. You cover the top of the soil with a thick mulch of wood chips or straw. You never leave the soil bare. Bare soil is dead soil. The sun sterilizes the surface, and the rain compacts it. The mulch acts as the skin of the earth, protecting the delicate biological processes happening underneath. And now, you step back. You plant your seeds, or your seedlings, directly into this bed. Here is the timeline of what you will experience. This is crucial, because you are unlearning decades of industrial programming. You are not going to see an overnight, synthetic explosion of green. In year 1, the system is waking up. The fungi are establishing their networks. The biochar is stabilizing. Your plants will grow well, but they will not be miraculous yet. You might even need to add a little organic liquid fertilizer to help them along if your native soil was particularly dead. This is normal. The battery is still reaching full capacity. But by year 3, a profound shift occurs. The fungal networks have achieved dominance. The soil structure physically changes. If you dig your hands into it, it will not feel like dirt. It will feel like moist, rich chocolate cake. It will smell deep, earthy, and sweet. The smell of geosmin, the chemical produced by thriving soil bacteria. You will notice that you are watering half as much as you used to. During a drought, when your neighbors' lawns are burning up and their chemical gardens are wilting, your plants will stand tall and bright green. The biochar is releasing its stored water reserves precisely when the plants demand it. By year 5, you will realize you haven't bought a bag of fertilizer in half a decade. Your plants will be massive. Your tomatoes will produce yields that literally snap the branches. The flavor of your vegetables will be intense, complex, and deeply satisfying, because the plants are finally accessing the full spectrum of trace minerals mediated by the fungal network. Pests will mysteriously avoid your garden. Why? Because pests are nature's garbage collectors. They are biologically programmed to attack weak, stressed plants, emitting specific infrared and chemical distress signals. A plant grown in terra preta is radiating health. Its cell walls are armored with calcium and silica. Its immune system is operating at maximum capacity. An aphid, attempting to feed on a plant grown in terra preta, is like a person trying to chew through a brick wall. The pests will bypass your fortress and attack the chemically stressed, weak plants down the street. By year 10, you are no longer managing a garden. You are stewarding an ancient technology. The soil will have physically expanded. The earthworms will be massive and abundant. You can plant anything, and it will thrive. You will have successfully recreated the biological engine of the Amazon basin, right in your own backyard. This is what Carvajal saw in 1541. He saw the result of thousands of years of intentional, biological stewardship. He saw a civilization that understood that true wealth is not gold, not silver, and certainly not fiat currency. True wealth is topsoil. The industrial food system has spent the last century trying to make you forget this. They have spent billions of dollars on marketing campaigns to convince you that soil is just a sterile medium and that you must purchase their patented, fossil fuel-derived chemicals to survive. They want you on the treadmill. They want you dependent on their supply chains, their transportation networks, and their prices. But the moment you build this soil, you sever that dependence. You step off the treadmill. 10 years from now, the world will likely be more chaotic. Supply chains will falter. The price of synthetic fertilizer, which is tied directly to the price of natural gas, will skyrocket. The cost of food in the grocery store will reflect the absolute fragility of a system built on burning fossil fuels to create artificial fertility. When that time comes, your neighbors will be anxious. They will be worried about scarcity, about inflation, about instability. But you will walk out into your backyard. You will plunge your hands deep into the black, spongy earth. You will pull out carrots that are dense with nutrition, tomatoes that are bursting with flavor, and greens that are vital and alive. You will feel a profound, quiet calm that no amount of money can buy. You will feel sovereignty. Not the loud, boastful kind of independence that announces itself, the quiet, unshakable kind of sovereignty that doesn't need to speak. Because you have built something that cannot be taxed, cannot be regulated, and cannot be taken away, you have built an engine of absolute independence. You have partnered with the ancient intelligence of the earth itself. If this knowledge opens something for you, if you can see yourself standing in that garden 10 years from now, take action. Don't let this be just another thing you listen to and forget. Dig the pit. Burn the wood. Crush the bone. Share this with someone who is ready to stop asking for permission and start building real security. The knowledge has survived empires, plagues, and the Industrial Revolution. It is here. The choice is yours. The soil is waiting.